Welcome to episode 4 of the Blokebusters podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Paul.
Today is October 12th, 2012, and today we are going to be discussing our favorite Mel Brooks films. And Paul, why don't we go ahead and start with yours?
Alright, well mine is, for most people might think, a little bit of an odd one for favourite, Young Frankenstein. I will say off the bat, I picked this mainly because I think it's the best all-round film, the one that I could watch again and again, and the jokes haven't sort of diminished because I've already heard them, and it's got the real plot to drive it through. Not saying that the other films don't have that, but most of the other films, I would say, very much joke-driven, scene-driven, and then the plot is weaved around it. But going into just the basics of it, really, it is an hour and 45 minutes long, which is a little bit longer than I remembered it being, but that's the run time.
A little bit long, for a comedy, especially a Mel Brooks film. But.
Gene Wilder as Frederick Frankenstein. The
correct pronunciation.
Yep, the point of annoyance by him during the beginning of the film. Cloris Leachman, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
I believe you nailed that.
Frau Blucher. Which apparently Blucher is supposed to be the German translation of glue. However, I found out that it's the incorrect translation of glue.
So the horses are stupid.
Yes, the horses are hard of hearing. The late great Marty Feldman as Igor, sorry. I must have been wrong. Terry Garr as Inga, the assistant, and Madeline Kahn as Frederick's fiancée, Elizabeth. A very high-strung
Not the
hair! Yes, you might be listening to quite a few quotes.
This will be quote heavy.
And again, the late Peter Boyle as the monster.
Fantastic.
Very good monster. And a lovely cameo from the wonderful Gene Hackman.
Yes, Gene Hackman. Oscar winner, Gene Hackman.
As the sad old blind man. But we'll get to that. Alright, well, the very basic plot of this film takes us to Transylvania, and you see that the Baron von Frankenstein has died and doesn't want to let go of his will. Won't let go of that sucker. After which you see Gene Wilder as Frederick Frankenstein, a brilliant surgeon.
Yes.
And you also get to hear the pronunciation several times, as he likes to correct this one student.
And see the source of his frustration in his lecture.
Yeah, you get to see that he sees his grandfather, being the Frankenstein of the books, as a complete kook, as he says, does not want to be associated with the man whatsoever, and sees his scientific experiments as a complete waste of time and ramblings of a lunatic.
Yes, dead is dead, or whatever he says.
Yes, it's a very good speech, actually, by Gene Wilder.
And then, I love him getting riled up by the student.
And you also get to see, as a result of that, the staple of the film, very much a physical comedy thing as well, ending with him stabbing himself with the scalpel.
and then slowly crossing his leg.
Class dismissed. So he is then told of his great-grandfather having died, and then ends up going to Transylvania because he now apparently owns the grounds of Frankenstein Castle.
Might as well check out the digs.
As of this point, the sets, I would say, haven't been fantastic. Train ride is very obvious, train on a stage of rattling or whatever. But when you actually get down to Transylvania, the sets suddenly get a lot bigger and a lot more intricate. For instance, skipping ahead a little bit, when they actually get into the castle. The sets in the castle are just fantastic.
Yeah. Before that, there are a lot of wonderful matte paintings of just the castle itself.
Well, obviously over the opening credits, you see zooming in on the castle. Which I actually didn't fully realise until watching it again recently, that I think what they were going for was the light is on and then the light goes out and then it cuts to the dead Baron von Frankenstein. I think maybe that's them sort of being the light's out, he's dead now, and getting to
I don't know.
Maybe probably reading too much into that, but whatever.
Mel Brooks is a very deep man.
Oh yes. This is not actually a slant on Mel Brooks. We love the guy.
Yes.
just a slight dig, So yes, at the train station we are introduced to Igor using the wonderful bit of dialogue, I thought, where they meet, and once again you get the Dr. Frankenstein. Like, you're having me on.
No.
Yes. No, it's
But also
Frankenstein.
Frederick.
Yes. And so, of course, it's and you must be Igor. No, it's Igor. They told me Igor. Well, they were wrong, weren't they?
Totally just being a pain in the ass. I love it.
I love the callback to that as well later when they're going down, again, skipping ahead. They're going down into the laboratory, and you see the skulls, and it's 2 years dead, 6 months dead, freshly dead, and the freshly dead is Igor go, I ain't got nobody. And then, Igor, Frederick. And he doesn't even bother to correct him at this point, he's just going with it. So yes, plenty of good humour from Igor, played by the wonderful Marty Feldman.
He's one of those that makes the film for me.
Yeah, it's a fantastic character. Not a wrong beat with him as well. Like obviously there are some people you can have brilliant roles, and then maybe just at one point it'll be okay. He didn't add much to the scene. Every time he was in the scene, he was adding
always
something.
improving it. Yeah.
Even if it's just the little things. Like there's even one point where he's talking to Frederick, and then they have a little bit of an argument, and he ends up just sort of rubbing his chin on his shoulder. It's like, there's no need for that, and yet he did it anyway. It's just fantastic little bit of extra acting there. But yeah, I always thought that despite the sort of length of the film and the fact that it's a lot slower paced, because at this point I think you're only 50 minutes in and you've only just been introduced to 2 of the characters that you're going to see for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Just about to be introduced to a third, but it's much slower pace than most of the other films, and yet the plot is really getting you in, because this is the grandson of the Frankenstein. He's going to Transylvania, and you know that something's going to end up happening here, and you're starting to really get a feel for the characters, even though you've not necessarily seen much of their background. And yet, I think it's just a brilliantly plot-fueled film.
Well, yeah, it's done very straight up as a horror thriller film. It isn't, like you said, a joke at every turn.
No,
it's done legitimately as a send-off of those films. Yeah.
Well, the late, great Leslie Nielsen actually once said that the best way to play comedy is completely straight.
Yeah.
Because that's where you get someone like his character in Airplane. Everything's going to hell like the other characters are going, and he is just dead straight. He is a doctor. He is and not playing it for laughs, just playing it.
Yeah,
and
you can go too far with silly.
Yeah.
With, buffoonery.
Which I'm sure we'll get to eventually.
Yes, slightly covered in my pick.
But yes, so moving back.
Forward to move back.
Yeah. We are then introduced to Inga, who is to be the assistant, who is introduced with the line, "Hello, would you like to have a roll in the hay?" roll in the hay. So yes.
Classic introduction.
Oh yes. Yeah. When the character is introduced with an innocent line, I think you see where this might be heading.
Yes.
Of course, the one character that I mentioned at the beginning but haven't talked about at all, Frederick's fiancée, Elizabeth, as I said, very highly strung. They're trying to say goodbye at the train station, despite the fact that she will not let him touch her.
No.
Because first the hair, because the hair has been done, she's going to a party. So
what's the hair for? Oh, he kisses her on the cheek because she didn't want her lipstick to be smeared. And then touches the hair.
Touches the hair. And then, of course, hugging after it, and so she goes, "Taffeta, taffeta, darling." No, the coat. It's taffeta.
It wrinkles her hand, and weren't her nails just
the nails
manicured
just done,
or something?
So of course, bumping elbows
is their solution.
And then I think a brilliant also slight on those films where they have the goodbye at the train station and the smoke's all going. You see the goodbye.
Yeah, so that's the last we see of her, is it not?
For quite a while.
For quite a while, yeah.
Yeah, I think she doesn't
Played
come
by,
in until
did you
about...
mention?
Yes, Madeline Kahn.
Okay.
Who, again, might be popping up later.
Yes.
As a fairly familiar face in the Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks likes to use Madeline Kahn.
Not as much as Gene Wilder. But
No.
So then they're on their way to Frankenstein Castle. You get more of the types of jokes you'll be seeing. They're sort of werewolf, their wolf, their castle. fantastically
Brilliant.
delivered by Marty Feldman as well. And then you get to see the slight silliness as well with the sort of, why are you talking like that? I thought you wanted to. No. Well, please yourself. And so
Marty, I love you.
So they arrive and are met by Frau Blucher, insert horse neighing here, which we won't be bothering to try and do because it's just going to hurt. And so she is the rather stern house sitter. I mean, she had a bit more of a past than that, but as of right now, she's a house sitter. And I sort of got the vibe of course, it wasn't out then, of course, but like remembering it, it's the same sort of character look and feel as the head nurse in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's like
Nice ratchet.
Yeah, very sort of calm and collected and doesn't let much on. And this is another person who, with the exception of, I think, one scene, she is a very straight-laced person. You get to see she is trying to do her job and make Frederick feel at home. The bit was like, would you like some brandy before you go to bed? No, thanks. Some milk? No. Ovaltine?
Nothing. Thank you.
If you actually watch the film, that particular bit of dialogue takes a good 30 seconds. Another example of the slow fade. And a large part of it is just you see Gene Wilder's character just sort of staring like, what's going on here? Like, no, go away. Which I will actually say this film does a very good job of letting you see Frederick's descent into somewhat madness throughout the first half of it. Because he knows that his grandfather's library is there and he just wants to get to it.
But be some confusion in getting to it. But,
of course, the classic physical comedy of the swinging bookcase.
Do not put the candle back.
Yeah. That scene, the introduction of saying the word back as Beck. Put the candle back. Talking of candles, of course, the going up the staircase with stay close to the candles. The non-lit candles.
Yeah, exactly, which are not lit. Oh, fantastic.
So many of these things I don't think would really
It can be
play
treacherous.
in modern film. Yeah. I mean, like, can you imagine a modern film going with some of these things, like going this slow and being billed as a comedy? It
would just now be regarded as a Mel Brooks
rip-off.
Yeah, I know. We have slightly more sophisticated audiences now, and as film buffs, we can appreciate those jokes. And I don't know if a lot of people if they would watch those films for the first time, it would be interesting to know if those jokes work for them.
Yeah,
I would question some of them, just like I said, because they've seen everything.
Yeah,
everything's been done.
Yeah, I mean,
but I still have a heart for the classics, as do you.
I remember actually first seeing this. Just let's get off the plot for a second again. I remember first seeing this. I wasn't very old. I would have been, I think, 11 or 12 when I first saw this film. I can't remember I think I saw Blazing Saddles first because it was just on TV, and then I saw Spaceballs, and then I saw this, and even at the time I remember thinking like, okay, it's not necessarily as funny based on non-stop jokes and stuff, but it was really holding me into it, whereas a lot of the films that were coming out at that time that I went to see weren't even necessarily having my attention that much. But there was always something in this film to look at, to appreciate, and this film is in black and white, which I think was a fairly bold choice. Obviously,
given the year 74, Technicolor had been around.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's part of the slight parodying of the old Frankenstein film, but still
to
come out
essentially
with
acts
a
as
black
a character,
and white.
the black and white. It's really helps pull you into that world.
But still, given a black and white film coming out in 1974, would have been a huge risk, and I think it paid off. I'm not sure. I don't believe it did badly.
Yeah, I don't know about theatrically, but I'm sure he sold a few DVDs here and there over the years.
Probably. So yes, Frederick ends up finding the laboratory and reads from his grandfather's journal and basically figures out, hang on, he had something here. And the bit where you see him, not snap as it were, but you see him topple off the edge, the hair's all messed up, and just yelling, it could work. And then you see him basically going about how to do this. So the idea is you find someone of gigantic size with a very large swanstrucker. Woof, as they say. So, of course, they end up finding such a body, having been hanged, I believe, that night.
Yeah.
Yes, a very good stroke of luck for them there. And so they dig them up with the classic line, like, could be worse. Why? Could be raining.
It's never been done before.
No, not at all.
Still love it.
Yeah. And then transporting the body back, the thing crashes, so they have to put him back onto their cart with the arm sticking out when, of course, he meets the policeman. So, using the dead man's arm as your own, just like, yep, sir, thank you. Giving the handshake.
Oh, yes.
Cold to the bone. And so, basically, that scene was a way of introducing Frederick to one of the policemen, because a scene after that one is all of the town people gathering around in a locale to just say, like, he's a Frankenstein, they're all alive, this is all going to happen, and the head
the
people,
oh.
right, yeah, the inspector, the inspector does turn up. But
yeah, sorry, jumping ahead.
That's fine. We do that sometimes. The head councilmen are saying, like, this man does not seem like that at all. Which, of course, at no point in the film, except for that one policeman meeting him for about a minute, had anyone else seen Frankenstein anywhere. So, a very nice sort of play on the old sort of, this isn't my arm, but we got to pretend it is. And getting the whole, like, how do we get him to meet these people out of the way? And then after that little bit, you see the head inspector, Inspector Kemp, who has the wooden arm that occasionally lets him down.
It was a podcast, but we are miming the inspector right now.
Anytime you hear a little bit of silent with a little bit of a sound effect, just imagine us moving our arms.
Yes, and possibly getting stuck.
And he, of course, says that nobody wants a riot, so you have to confirm the fact that he is following in his grandfather's footsteps. What? Following in his footsteps. Oh, footsteps. The so classically rural person that not even his own town people can understand him half the time. You see Igor going to get the brain of the wonderful scientist Hans Delbruck, and breaks into
nothing can go wrong.
Yeah, nothing can go wrong here. Breaks into the brain depository.
That's what I need. I need a brain depository.
Yes. And of course, if they're not open, you just let the brain through the slot in the door.
Very convenient.
Oh, yes. So he goes in and steals the brain, and then thunder, catches a look at himself, oh no, smash! So, of course, he takes the brain marked abnormal, which, of course, anyone would. I think if you'd lost one brain, just go with the abnormal. If you
misunderstand what that AB
It does come into play in a little bit. So, they perform the experiments as it's written down, doing another great thing where it basically completely defeats the laws of physics and time, and yet it's just a great little thing they do where they have Igor standing up at the very top, fixing the kite. And it's like, there's a slight possibility of electrocution. Do you hear me? And then he's right next to him going, yeah, I hear you. What are you shouting? You tried a kite? Of course. Okay. And so they perform the experiment, and then nothing. Like, complete waste of time. And they take this defeat with utter humility and grace. By beating up the corpse.
Yes, I had nearly forgotten.
And then you find out, actually, the next morning, it did work. Just took a little while longer. And so they go down, and the guy's sort of awake, going, "Rrrr." And then, of course, he unstraps him, gets him up, walking around. The whole, it's working, he's walking. Igor gets out a cigarette. Takes the match, lights it, it flies off the hand and starts getting...
But are you saying is he averse to...
Slightly adverse to fire, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know this about
Frankenstein's
monsters.
most of the monsters I think are fine with fire. It's water they're afraid of.
Okay.
But this one, it's fire.
Odd enough.
Which
Odd choice.
leads to, I think, my absolute favourite scene within a scene, as it were, like the set of dialogue in the whole film, and possibly even of any Mel Brooks film. Like, it's quick, give him the 3 syllables. Yeah, said yeah. And it's like, sounds like give. Give him a sedative. Sedative. And then, of course, he sits him down, like, now, just tell me, I will not be angry. Did the brain that we put in there belong to Hans Delbruck? No. Whose brain is it? Abby someone.
Abby someone.
Abby someone, yes. Abby Normal. Abby Normal. Yes, I'm pretty sure that was the name. Are you telling me that we put an abnormal brain into a 7 foot tall, 2.5 feet wide, and he starts strangling him. Quick, give him the 3 syllables, yes. And the dog goes. That whole scene,
perfectly played by Marty Feldman and Gene Wilder.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those scenes where not much is happening, but everything, the way they're saying the dialogue, the way they're looking at each other, is just fantastic.
Just, two masters of comedy, just doing what they do.
So then the inspector comes round just to have a look, see if he is indeed following in his grandfather's footsteps, and plays an excellent game of darts. And then he leaves, but just after that, Frau Blucher is freeing the monster. And during that whole scene, you find out that she was his grandfather's girlfriend. Which anyone paying attention at the beginning of the film pretty much figured it out.
Easily alluded to quite early on.
I think that is the one point in the film where it doesn't have the grandeur of the rest of the film, because it's a big sort of, he was my boyfriend thing, and it's like, well, we know.
Didn't she? Yeah, she kissed the painting. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But anyway, so the monster escapes and runs into first a little girl who I believe was called Helga, playing outside. The father of which, played by Mel Brooks, the actual only on-screen live acting that he does. Apparently he did the voice of the cat being hit by a dart, and he is the
basis, only he could.
Yeah, and he is the basis of the painting for Frederick's grandfather. But yes, his only on-screen thing, and I actually, when I was rewatching this, I went into this thinking this is the only film that doesn't have Mel Brooks in it. I thought he wasn't...
didn't make an appearance.
Yeah, and then I was watching, I was like, hang on. No, there he is. Okay. My mistake. So yes, you get the classic sort of parody of the original thing where the girl is absolutely fine at the end of it, whereas in the original works, of course, the girl does not fare so well. And then as he moves on from there, he comes across a blind man praying for a visitor to while away a few hours, played by the wonderful Gene Hackman. I think it was a favour. Did you research
the story? Yes, yeah. Because you just don't happen to have Gene Hackman. In the 70s, he was really turning them out in the 70s.
Yeah, and I didn't research it recently, but I remember looking it up at one point, and it was Gene Hackman told Mel Brooks he wanted to be in the film.
Yeah.
He knew he wouldn't be able to do a big role because of his other commitments and everything, but Mel Brooks basically said, okay, I've got this one scene for you.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes. So, of course, it very much almost a vaudeville act of... I'm blind, you're mute, I'm trying to show you compassion, but I'm pouring the soup in your lap. I'm smashing the glass of alcohol.
My favourite scene in the film.
Yeah. And of course, lighting your thumb on fire. The one point where you start to think, oh, maybe they're going to get over the monster's fear of fire, and they just reinforce it. Yeah, and another great scene where it's just two brilliant actors working off each other. And you start to see that the monster isn't brainless, because there's several points where he's excited about what he's about to get, and then the look of despair and annoyance when he doesn't get it. Yeah, just the drink where he makes sure he gets the drink, and he's about to have some, and then he proposes a toast, and smash! And just the look at the handle, the look up, just, So yes, I mean, at this point, even though Frederick is able to get the monster back by playing this one bit of music which is linked to the Frankenstein family somehow,
yes.
and apparently the monsters that they create, I guess. I don't know. But whatever.
Yes.
So they get him back, but the town is already starting to get a little bit odd about it.
Miffed.
However, Frederick is able to talk to the monster after, of course, do whatever you hear. Do not let me out of this room. And steps in. Let me out, what are you doing? Couldn't you tell I was joking? He manages to get him sort of under control, as it were, and that's the scene where he says, my name is Frankenstein. He's fully gone by this point. And so, of course, to showcase the monster to the living world, he has them up on stage, they walk forwards, they walk backwards, and then they do a song and dance number, as you would. As it were. Sorry about my terrible rendition there.
Oh, I think it was fantastic.
It was actually my first ever hearing of that song, was in this film, and I think I prefer this one.
For the unintelligible version.
Oh, yes. But of course, a fire breaks out, and the monster gets a little bit
bad.
Yeah. So, of course, he ends up in jail. Of course, Frederick is inconsolable, except Inga decides to step in and say, anything I can do for you whatsoever. Of course, the next thing you know, both of them are being wheeled down from the ceiling, lying in bed, at which point he is informed that his fiancée has arrived.
Perfect timing, of course.
And so Elizabeth has turned up, and they go out, they meet her, the classic line of, Igor, will you help me with the bags? Certainly, you take the blonde, I'll take the one in the turban. And so, of course, they end up talking in the bedroom. Frederick would quite like some sex with his fiancée, and his fiancée is having none of it. It doesn't happen, I'm afraid, sorry. Not on the eve of our wedding night. And, of course, just after that, the monster who has escaped from prison grabs her and takes her off into the woods. And in a bit of an odd scene, ends up basically saying that he wants to have sex with her by showing her his Swanstucker. And it culminates with her singing an aria from something.
Very high pitch.
So, and at that point she's got, I think it is at that point she's got the streak in her hair, so basically Bride of Frankenstein. And it turns into the point where the villagers are now massing and trying to break into the castle. At one point even using Inspector Kemp as a battering ram. If you have someone with a wooden arm, that's what I'd use as a battering ram.
Seemed to work.
And the villagers actually break into the castle just as they're performing a procedure which is supposed to help the monster's brain by transferring a little bit from Frederick to the monster so that the monster can be intelligent and can actually talk and won't be a problem to the villagers. But of course the villagers break in and stop the procedure 7 seconds before... Okay, technically I think 3 seconds,
yeah, I think it was about,
but the line is just another 7 seconds, smash. So
between 3 and 7 seconds.
Yeah. And just as they're about to take Frankenstein away and probably dispose of him, I would imagine the monster is able to give a plea based on the fact that this transfer has apparently worked. And so he gives this speech saying, all of you hated me, and yet this one man who created me, who was trying to make me into a better person, he was giving some of himself in. I never meant anything to happen to anyone. And I actually found out the speech that he gives is almost exactly the speech he gives in the original novels, which actually makes this version of Frankenstein one of the most faithful out of the entire set of Frankenstein films. This is one of the most faithful, which I think shows Mel Brooks when he spoofs stuff, he's just able to take something that he likes and he can run with it and make it funny and yet still have a good message in it, not get too far away from the original source material. Of course, it ends up Frederick is alright at the end of it. And the villagers are placated by the monster and they say, okay, we apologise. Inspector Kemp gives him the let me be the first to shake your hand in friendship. And at the end of it, you find out that the monster is now with Elizabeth in bed reading the magazine. And then you see that Frederick is with Inga, who queries, you gave some of your brain to the monster. What on earth did the monster give to you? Which culminates in her singing part of an aria, so you might be able to guess.
With that. Yeah.
And of course, we're played out with Igor playing the horn on the roof. Yeah, so that's basically my favourite Mel Brooks film of all, Young Frankenstein. Not putting down any of the other films or anything, because the other films are very good. But that one, I would say, I could definitely watch again and again, and none of it will have diminished, I should say. Like, the jokes I found in some of the others aren't as funny as the first one.
It's a classic film, not just in the world of comedy, but in the broader world of film.
Yeah,
it stands strong.
And as I've said before, I'm a very visual person, and this film has some really good sets and some really good...
If you haven't seen it, I know we've spoiled everything, but still it's worth seeing.
Oh yeah, definitely worth seeing. I mean, my synopsis of it doesn't even touch on that film.
Yes, I mean, yes, we gave a lot of lines away, but much better than 99% of everything that's coming out now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, based on our rating system, I would probably go into it with, I would say, minus 0. I'm going to go with 5.
Wow.
0.5. Like, it's not the best film or anything, but it's a very good film, very good spoof, very, very good comedy. Like, it's not your typical comedy, but it's a very good comedy. And the characters are fantastic, so definitely worth seeing.
All right. Well, if I had to offer my rating from 0 to minus 20, I would have to give it, I would say, a minus 2.
Minus 2?
Minus 2.
I can see that, yeah.
Okay, so it's a little slow, it's a little long for me.
That was one of the main things that knocked it down for me. It's like, it did seem a little bit too long.
And rating it kind of on the Mel Brooks curve.
Okay.
That would,
especially since this isn't your favorite film, so...
Yes. But I am still a proud owner of a DVD. Haven't upgraded to the Blu-ray yet on that one, but...
Yes, I was before I moved to America, so don't judge me there. I lost a large amount of my collection.
Oh, yeah, it's darn regional. But, yes, minus 2 for me. So
all right.
I think that about sums...
That pretty much sums Young Frankenstein. All right, and your film, sir?
Well, it was the aforementioned, very briefly, I believe, by Sir Paul. Sorry, I'm trying out nicknames.
Yes, you must. Hurricane, please.
Hurricane. All right, sorry, Hurricane.
Thank you.
Mine, I was talking to Paul earlier, and I kind of had a toss-up between two.
Understandably so.
Slightly edged out. Blazing Saddles was the winner. Spaceballs was my second favorite.
Honorable mention, Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Fantastic. I mean, late work.
And it's also got, I think, just to briefly run into it, that little scene that I love that kind of makes fun of the people that will randomly sort of burst into song in some film. The line, Robin talking to Marion, is just, the night is young and you're so beautiful. B flat.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there is I don't know if it's intended or not, but a slight callback to the eyes being damned in Young Frankenstein.
A little bit, yeah.
I haven't seen the film recently, but a follower or a listener let me know what that line was in Men in Tights. There's something about damn your eyes.
Yeah, in Frankenstein, of course, damn your eyes. Too late.
Too late, yes. I don't know if that was intended or not, but I was just trying to draw a parallel there. So anyway, Blazing Saddles came out in 1974, same year as Young Frankenstein. And Cleavon Little as Sheriff Bart. You have Gene Wilder as Jim, a.k.a. the Waco Kid.
But most people call him Jim.
Quick plot of the film. You open up on a railroad scene. A lot of African-American slaves working on the railroad.
Yeah, as they would have been.
As they would have been. And
yes, period piece, by the way.
Yes.
Not just saying.
Yes. I think one of the... comments on the back of the DVD is 1874 where a soundstage at 1974 is only a mile away or only, so very close or something like that. But anyway, 1874 Old West, working on this railroad, opening scene. They have little problems here, and they figure out that the most efficient way is they have to pass through this town. To keep this railroad going, to keep the money going, they have to run through this town of Rockridge. And how do you do that? Well, you have to get the people out of the town somehow. Yeah. And so we have Hedley Lamar.
That is Hedley.
Not to be confused by Hedy Lamar. Yes. Don't sue us, please. From wherever you are. Played brilliantly by Harvey Korman. And he is a very connected, I forget his exact title, but he's a very connected politician in the know, knows lots of people. Yeah. And his subordinate Taggart.
Yes, Taggart, who was actually running the railroad crew.
Yes,
earlier.
Played by Slim Pickens, the best name ever in show business.
Yeah, I do love this guy. I mean, basically, if you haven't seen the end of Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Love Love the Bomb, has possibly the best death scene ever.
Just watch it. Yeah,
I actually won't
go watch.
I actually won't spoil that one for you because I don't want to. We
might get to Sellers someday, but yeah. Or Kubrick,
or both.
Yes,
we might do a very strange double podcast there.
Yes. So anyway, yes, Taggart's played by Slim Pickens. So they have this quick little brainstorming session. How do we get him out of town? And a few failed ideas. And then Taggart hits on it. We'll give him the old number 6.
Number 6? I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that.
And that's where we go up and open. Everything in sight. And, you spare the women? And pardon me for this line, I'm going to read it straight out. No, we rape the shit out of them. So, cue the number 6. Yeah. We have the sheriff killed. And so now, time for a town meeting.
Yeah, I will actually say that's because you see the rampage and everything. Yeah. You see the number 6 happen. You don't see all of it, but you see the basic,
not the naughty bits of the number 6. Yeah,
you see the town being attacked by these people. The way that is sort of narrated by the choir inside the meeting,
with their little choir song. Yeah.
So it's like so you hear this there of like then all at once the trouble started and it's this great song to cover the thing, and then all of a sudden you realise they're still going. They cut to the church. It's like these people are singing about what just happened
right now. Yeah, like, very close to the Spaceballs. Yeah. When will then be now?
Very very meta. Spaceballs the movie.
Yeah, so we have the sheriff killed. So we have a meeting with everyone in town who just happens to be named Johnson, yes. Apparently.
This is a very, very Johnson-heavy town.
And we have the preacher who says, it's time to act. I'm leaving.
A lovely line. I love that.
I'm leaving. And then, so then we have an impassioned speech, whether you understand it or not, by
Gabby Johnson.
Gabby Johnson, you were correct, sir. And
I could try and do it, but I'm actually not going to because I won't do it justice.
Why don't you just tell me what the gist of that speech was, if you recall? Well, I hope I don't put you on the spot.
No. The gist of it is that he's been living in this town for so long that nobody is going to come and ruin his biscuit cutter.
That is correct.
that is the main thing I got from that speech, and. Lovely follow-up line from this 20 seconds of absolute gibberish of, now, who could argue with that?
I don't recall, I don't know if that was Howard Johnson or Olsen or Samuel. I don't know. I even though I just saw the film on Wednesday, this being Friday.
That's the problem. I think there's 2 Howards.
Yes. So but anyway, he says, not only was that authentic frontier gibberish. Oh, it's just terrific. But so anyway, the point of that is that they want a new sheriff.
Yeah.
And now we cut to the introduction of Mel Brooks' role as governor. I hope I pronounced this correct. Lepidamine.
Yes.
And he's just having a little, business meeting, what have you.
With the boys
and his lovely gal pal.
Yes.
Hello, boys. Does a little motorboat for you. Not as familiar, but...
Work. Hello, boys. Yes.
We have the introduction of the paddle balls, famous paddle balls.
Yes, this thing is warped.
Before that, you like that line. My favorite line reading is, these things are defective.
Yes.
And then Lamar takes his and expertly hits it.
Yes. Right as usual, sir.
Right as usual. And we get the talon cry of harumph.
Yes.
Harumph.
Yes. You must do something. Harumph, harumph. I didn't get a harumph out of that guy. Give that governor a harumph.
I'll have to admit, I'm not entirely sure, other than the introduction of Governor, what entirely the point of that scene was.
I think it's just to have Mel Brooks.
Just have Mel Brooks being Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
And then one of my also favorite lines, I have about 40, but... hand these out to the boys in lieu of pay. Hand out the paddle balls. Hand them out. Hand these out to the boys.
Yeah, what they were saying, isn't it? Like 100,000 acres. What'll it cost? A box of these. Very good actual riff on what actually happened back then.
Pretty much, yeah. So then we get the people have not left Rockridge. So now the new idea is, let's get a sheriff that is so offensive that people will just want to leave.
Yeah, because Eddie Lamar is underneath Lepidamine, and so he's just organised this whole thing to happen, and then the villagers have written to the governor, and so it's completely ruined his original plan.
Yes.
And so then, of course, yes, someone who will completely offend.
So who is so offensive in 1874?
Yeah, and of course, the brilliant line is like, but wherever would I find such a man? Why on earth am I asking you instead of the audience?
Oh, and I did gloss over at the beginning one of my favorite outside characters, Boris the Executioner.
Oh, yes.
I couldn't possibly fit him in before Wednesday.
I'm Brooks solid.
With the lisp and just perfect. He kind of reminds me of Igor a little. You know, he's just very, could play that role. I could see Marty Feldman, playing.
And of course, every time you go out to him, it's just isn't it the first time he's hanging a man in a wheelchair, like still in his wheelchair, and then a man on a horse, and then it's going to be the slave Bart that caused Taggart a little bit of trouble earlier on.
Yes, the quicksand. I'm so sorry I didn't get to the quicksand scene, but I got to keep moving. But so anyway, if you didn't catch on, the offensive person is a black man.
Is the black slave Bart.
Bart, yes. And so we have the town of Rockridge eagerly anticipating the new sheriff's arrival, all waiting, looking off into the distance. And we have Gabby Johnson with the spyglass, and he sees him coming and can't quite make him out, and the sheriff is near.
There he's coming, so strike up the band.
And
church bells are
as
going.
he gets closer, it is revealed, just exactly the complexion of this man. And we have a very inappropriate nowadays line. Even then, inappropriate. The sheriff is a N-word.
However, in this
covered
case,
up by a gong or a ding, whatever,
a bell.
And
it's like, what did he say? The sheriff is near. No, God, son, the sheriff is
Can't you see that man is a... But anyway, to cover this real quick, I did do a slur count. These DVDs have expletive counts and stuff.
Yeah.
Real quick, just to run this down. 12 N-words. 2 not-so-nice words to call Asian people.
Yeah.
And 1 not-so-nice word to call a homosexual.
Oh, okay.
Just for any of you keeping score at home.
I will say that 12 N-words seems a little low based on my recollection.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm not correcting the gongs where he did not get the word out, or you couldn't hear the word.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it seems a little low. However, I do know most of them come at the beginning.
But us watching that in modern times, 2 seems like a lot.
I actually I got the chance to see this film several weeks ago on a particular channel. Can't remember it off the top of my head. But I was watching it and waiting, and it got to that scene, and I was like, okay, all right. Like, what are they going to do to dub this out? How's this going? Mm-hmm. And then they played it. And then I found out this channel actually exists to play things uncut with no advert. And I was like, number 1, how does this exist in America? Number 2, how did they allow this film to be shown, even though it's uncut? I mean, this one particular word. Yeah. So, and this is now, obviously. Now we're really offended by it. Back then, they would have been offended.
I think I will touch on that a little bit. But I just want to back up a little bit. I did gloss over the scene where the idea is introduced to Mel Brooks about this idea, and he pulls Bart to the side with him. Supposedly it's to be Lamar, and he's whispering, "Can't you see that man and as he looks up says, "Nah."
Yeah. Takes him back. And then, of course, does verbatim the same thing, ending with, "Can't you see that man is a nigger?"
It stops right there.
It's like, I do like that Mel Brooks himself didn't say the line.
Yes,
I do.
He
didn't want to go with
I don't
that.
think, he could have probably gotten away with it.
Yeah, he might have gotten away with it, but I'm glad he didn't.
Exactly. So anyway, the town greets the new sheriff. Obviously, not the biggest fan.
Yeah.
Not so happy. I believe they say the line, "Governor is the leading asshole in the state."
Yes. And I believe it's like everyone starts pulling their gun as he's reading, "Yes, I'm going to be the sheriff."
And so now we get to the prison. We introduced Gene Wilder. He introduces himself. He says, "My name is Jim.
Yeah.
But most people call me Jim. And so we have Cleavon Little, of course, the actor, and Gene Wilder sparring as one of the best scenes in the film, in my mind, where they play chess, where it comes up that Gene Wilder is actually the famous Waco Kid, retired because everyone would challenge him, and he got tired of challenging.
Yeah.
So they played chess, and he's asked to prove it,
Yeah.
and he grabs the chess piece. And said the thing that made him retired was a 6-year-old challenged him, and he just had it. He dropped his guns and he walked away. The little bastard shot me in the ass. So that was the end of the Waco Kid.
I
point.
loved that line when I first heard it. I was like, you expect it to end with just walking away. Nope.
So we go a little into the sheriff's backstory. The wagon train as a young child, and we get the second Mel Brooks character, the Indian chief.
We're not speaking, I think, a word of...
he speaks in Yiddish, actually. Yeah, and I did have written down what it was, but not important what he says in Yiddish. And then we get to the famous bean scene, the much controversial, discussed.
This is the controversial scene, ladies and gentlemen.
It is ridiculous that this is a lot of people. A lot of people had a problem with flatulence.
Yeah,
and according to Mel Brooks, had not been recorded in a film to that point.
Really?
Which I did not fact check this. I'm just reading the IMDb facts.
I can believe it, I guess.
It's a sensitive, sensitive type thing. You don't, but
because there's like loads of films where you don't even realize it. You never see people going to the toilet until like fairly recently. It just wasn't put in film.
He said, it's like cowboys on. He's like on their diet of meat and beans. Is like that is what had to have happened. Yeah. So of course it's, in Mel Brooks style, gone way over the top.
Yeah.
And just gets to where they can barely breathe. The only important information really to take from that is that they need to kill the sheriff. Yeah. How are we going to do this? We'll give him Mongo. A gargantuan beast, dim-witted man known as Mongo. And meanwhile, the sheriff has the idea, well, he just needs to establish himself in this town, and he'll get the respect of the townspeople. And he quickly gets a "up yours" N-word from the sweetest old lady in the world.
Yeah, the very first person he meets stepping out the door.
And Gene Wilder, Jim, assures him, these are just common people, blah, blah, blah. Morons. So the sheriff has to deal with this Mongo in perfect cartoon style. Yeah. Hands him a little box that goes boom. Yes. And we get the black soot covered Mongo.
Yes. Of course, he does it dressed as a guy giving a candygram, which leads to the brilliant line later. It's like, how'd you do it? Oh, getting the bomb wasn't a problem. Coming up with a candygram.
Inventing the candygram. So then, obviously, that didn't work. So now we have another scene with Lamar and Taggart. Lamar in his bath, concerned about not finding his froggy. Where's my froggy? My froggy. Where's my froggy?
Dead froggy. Yeah, daddy not froggy. Froggy like daddy? Ribbit.
So anyway, brilliant line by Taggart. You use your tongue prettier than a $20 whore. So they come up with the idea, well, let's send a woman to do the job. Cue Madeline Kahn.
Yes.
Aforementioned in Young Frankenstein. She plays Lily von Stoop.
Is it Stoop or Stoop?
Stoop? I don't know. It's S-H-T-U-P-P.
Okay.
Stoop.
However you want to pronounce it.
Exactly.
Right?
And she does this cabaret performance. Brilliant song called I'm Tired. I believe that's the name. That's the gist of it.
Yeah.
But I'm so very tired. Yeah. Of course, the whole idea is for the sheriff to meet with her, which he is coerced into doing. And Lily seduces the sheriff, and we get another Mel Brooks style love scene, and which I found out the only line cut out of the film. She supposedly, wants to hear if it's true what they say about men of his race with their appendages.
Wait a minute. So did you guys not have that version then?
No, that's in there.
Okay.
That's in there. I'm getting to the line that was cut out.
Okay, I was a bit confused there.
And what was cut out is you hear her, and he says, "You're sucking on my elbow." Supposedly the only line cut out, that because Mel Brooks did have final cut for Blazing Saddles, and he did apparently cut that out.
I guess I can see why he would cut that out, but still, again, in a film where you have several other words.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So, anyway, so then we get to the scene with Bart, Jim, and Mongo. Mongo's wonderful philosophical line, Mongo only pawn in game of life. You get a lot of exposition here by Mongo. Reveals why Lamar is interested in Rock Ridge.
Yeah.
Has to do with the choo-choo.
Yes.
As he so eloquently puts it.
The choo-choo.
And so they all go to the railroad to investigate. Then we have the scene with Taggart, Lamar, and Lily. New plan again. Yeah. We're going to contract out some outlaws, some lowlifes, some criminals, and they're just going to destroy the town. We're going to pay them, they're going to destroy the town. And so you have a wonderful scene with the queue of, of all the outlaws. Nazis,
Mexican bandits.
Yes. So, and then Bart says, give me 24 hours to come up with a plan to save the town. No! By the townspeople. And he says, you would for Randall Scott, the other sheriff. Okay, 24 hours.
Randall Scott.
So, I think I jumped ahead there. Then we have the line of the outlaws. And the classic scene where two people or one person beats up a guard or someone dressed as someone and then steals their wardrobe.
Obviously, in this case, it is them.
Ku Klux Klan. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
I'm so excited.
So yes, Bart, the black man of
the
duo, is now dressed in a Ku Klux Klan.
And the classic line to get their attention, where are the white women at? And then we have another wonderful reference. We have the Stinking Badges reference to the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, one of my favorite westerns of all time. And the other great line, we'll head them off at the pass. Lamar says, I hate that! I hate that cliche!
I do like, they clearly not really thought that much about what they were going to say when they got up to the desk. It's like, what have you done? Stampeding cattle? Well, that's not very bad. Through the Vatican?
You mentioned rape twice. I love rape. Wow. All right. So anyway, Bart's idea and Jim's idea is they're going to build an exact replica of Rock Ridge to be destroyed, and they're going to accomplish this in one night. Of course. And do we have the strength to build in one night, or are we just jerking off? Great line by the preacher.
And of course, I don't know, were you going to touch on where they were going to get the manpower for that?
I was not, but yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, Bart ends up going to get the other slaves that he was with to bring them in. So, of course, when they get there, the town people are saying, no. And so they're like, all they want is a little bit of land to call their own. And then they end up saying, all right, we'll get some land to the N-words and the CH words. But we don't want the Irish.
I did, I thought of mentioning that, but
and so of course it's like, really, the Irish you have a problem with. But anyway,
then we cue the movie magic, of course, and it's very clearly an exact movie set of the town, and they have a great plan to slow down the Raiders. One of my other favorite scenes with a toll road in the open plains.
Yeah, exactly. Just the one booth with the one.
And someone go back and get a shitload of dimes or nickels, or I think it might be nickels.
They say dimes. They say dimes.
Do they dimes? Okay,
Probably because dimes is funnier than nickels.
So one horse at a time, they go through the toll. And it's just perfect Mel Brooks for me. Just completely absurd, but it works.
Well, and the thing is, of course, they're doing that because they need time to build replicas of the people. Of course, so when they get there, you're like, okay, how are they going to solve this? They basically have wooden cardboard statuettes of people with one waving hand. Like,
So anyway, the idea is they're going to draw in the bad guys, and they're going to set off this explosion, and problem solved. What do you know? Explosion doesn't work, and Jim has to save the day with a pistol which has a probably range of 20 yards or so. Shoots it about half a mile. Of course, sets off the explosion, which traps the bad guys, and they move in to finish off the job.
The other thing I was going to say about that scene is finally the comeuppance of the somewhat annoying vicar who you like at the beginning, but and then by this point he just interrupts with like, "Oh, Lord, stuff," and he's finally beaten up by the townspeople because he interrupts.
And a great little moment with Gabby Johnson fighting people with his breath.
Oh, yeah.
Breathes on the man and falls right over. And so then we just start to go completely Mel Brooks insane.
Yeah.
And the shot pulls out to show the studio lot.
Yeah.
Completely breaking down the fourth wall.
Oh, yes.
You know. And
then
then we show Dom DeLuise. He's making the movie within the movie, the song and dance movie, and the fight pours out into that soundstage.
Yeah.
And
then it seems to turn into, rather than a fight between the original fight, it's now Mel Brooks versus everyone else.
But you have Hedley Lamar punching Dom DeLuise, and just all hell breaks loose. The dancers and the cowboys going at it.
Oh, just say Slim Pickens, I believe, not Hedley Lamar. He comes later.
Oh, yes, Slim Pickens, I believe. Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, just wanted to correct you now rather than
the listeners. Yes, thank you. I'm trying to move through this, and then so the fight pours out into the commissary, the cafeteria, as it were. You see Hitler in there,
who has been lost after the bunker scene, I believe.
Yes, and other ne'er-do-wells and all actors, you know. And then they all just pour out into the streets, out of the Warner Brothers lot into the streets of Los Angeles, and I'm assuming Los Angeles.
Yep, I would imagine so.
Yes, I don't. Yes, and so then cut to it is Lamar, correct? Going to see the film, Blazing Saddles.
Yet another meta in film of someone in the film seeing the film, like Spaceballs, as we said. Yes. They see Spaceballs, the movie.
And if you look closely, there is a movie poster in that scene that still says Black Bart, the original title of the film. So look for that the next time. Yeah. And so now we have the showdown with Sheriff Bart and Lamar. Bart shoots Lamar, and Bart and Jim go into the movie. Yeah. Pretty much. Shoots him in a not-so-great spot.
Yeah.
And they were outside the movie, so then they go in to watch the movie.
And then, once again, they're inside the film.
And, inside the film, Movie Bart, gives a very moving speech. Which the response is bullshit.
All right, you caught me.
All right. So Bart rides off, saying "Keep the faith," and happens to run along into Jim. And he's asked where he's going. He says, "Nowhere special." Jim says, "I've always wanted to go there." One of my other probably top 5 lines in the film. Although I probably have 20 top 5 lines. So Jim and Bart ride off into the sunset. Sort of. Yeah. So they
ride some of the way.
Some of the way. Hop off horseback and get into a town car. In 1874, supposedly. And the car rides off into the distance.
Yeah, uneven met by, like, a chauffeur who rushes them in.
Yes. Yeah, so I just wanted to give a few little side notes real quick. The screenplay was written by Brooks, Norman Steinberg, Andrew Bergman, and, of course, Richard Pryor, who was slated to play Bart, but was deemed too controversial for the role, given his stand-up and his views, stuff, very, so he was still able to, collaborate on the screenplay. And the tagline was "Never give a saga an even break." I wanted to throw that in there. And I mentioned it was originally called Black Bart, and even Tex-X before that, a la Malcolm X.
Right.
And I mentioned the fourth wall breaking, a true trademark.
Yeah, that is one of the great things I like.
Yeah, I love the turns to camera. And just briefly I want to mention, even in 1974, this film did have trouble getting released.
Right.
Because people watch this movie now and like, oh, how could you get a movie made like that? It wasn't easy even then.
Yeah.
And even the Warner Brothers executives said no. They went to a screening of the film. Not one laughed. And Mel Brooks was in the screening and thought, well, we're done. This is done. It's not going out.
I can't imagine what that would have felt like.
And, just to sit through that whole film that you've worked, so hard on, and not one person laughed. And my theory is, my research didn't show it, but you have these stuffy studio executives probably too afraid that their peers will think, oh, I find this funny.
Well, so it was either that or maybe they had just so much weighing on it. Like, okay, I'm not watching this as general public. I'm watching this as I'm holding the reputation of this studio on my shoulders.
Mel Brooks did not give up, quickly arranged for a screening for the Warner Brothers employees. Huge success.
Yeah.
Laughing the whole time. And so then was able to get released.
One thing I was going to say, but kind of skipping through it. My mother went to see this film with a friend and was almost thrown out of the cinema because she had, that day, gotten her hair done like Hedy Lamarr.
Wow.
So every time that came up, they had several ushers coming up just like, okay, keep it quiet.
So, and anyway, briefly just wanted to point out that this film did come out in 1974, and that was only 6 years after Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. So this was...
really? It was only that?
Yeah, so this was not, this was still very sensitive.
Yeah.
It still is to this day, but not to that extent. But I just thought that bared mentioning that it was an audacious undertaking for Mel Brooks and all the collaborators to get this film made.
Another thing I'll say about the use of the N-words in the film, I remember listening to a commentary on it, and Mel Brooks says, just so you know, every single use of the N-word in this film is used in context, in the way it was actually used back then. Mm-hmm. He never just threw it in. Yeah. You see, as the town people get used to Bart, and they... with the exception of, I think, once after he earns their respect, they don't use that word again. So it's very much, he was using it in context, and that probably helped, I think, with getting this film out. Because if he had just thrown them in, maybe it would have been...
it's just everywhere. Yeah. But we can't speak to that too accurately with too much sensitivity. But anyway, it stands alone as just a perfect comedy in my mind, but also the larger point for me is that Mel Brooks uses humor as a way to just show us the complete ridiculousness of stereotypes and the prejudices we have. And that's really kind of the message, other than just spoofing a Western, making all these Western jokes, and really kind of the message, just by complete absurdity. Yeah. You can't help but see that these people are idiots for having these stereotypes and these views.
Yeah, and everyone that does follow the stereotype that way is, in one way or another, an idiot. And I mean, the people that are really doing it are complete and utter idiots. So it's very well done. I do think that comedy is one of the few things you can use to get points like that across and not be completely brought down by political correctness. I mean, obviously, nowadays you would be hurled in some. Yeah. But you could still use comedy to get the point across rather than sit down and have a debate about it, because, for instance, that's more boring. I think more people are more likely to watch Blazing Saddles than a debate about racial stereotypes. Yeah. So, not saying that a debate about racial stereotypes would be boring or not interesting. It's just that more people are likely to see a comedy than that.
Yeah, ranked, I believe, number 6 on the American Film Institute's comedies of all time. And I would say it's my top movies of all time vary. I would say my top 10 lists or my top 5, just depending on my mood, whatever. Yeah. I would say Blazing Saddles never, ever leaves my top 5. It gets shifted around. Other movies get shifted around from 1 to 4 to whatever. Blazing Saddles, I think, is always in my top 5. Like you said with Young Frankenstein, I can always watch that, even if I don't get to watch it all the way through. I'll scene hop, whatever, and it's, like I said, it's greater than the vast majority of anything that's going to be on television or any other movie I could pop in for a little bit. Yeah. So I would rather choose that, even though I've seen it 100 times.
It's one of the few films that I think, because there's so many different sort of quote-heavy, scene-heavy bits in it, that you can just watch the odd bit here and there, and that will be as good as just watching the whole film. Yeah.
And now I laugh before the line, because I know the line is coming. So I'm laughing through the line reading.
Or, of course, you do the thing that my wife absolutely hates, despite the fact that she
Reciting?
does it. Yeah. Oh, despite the fact that she does it during The Grinch, she hates it if I start quoting.
Great to do alone, not with a partner, because it tends to, like you said, piss them off.
Maybe if you're watching it with other people who are similarly inclined. But yes, with someone who just wants to sit down and watch the film, not so much.
So anyway, get to my rating here real quick. I would rate Blazing Saddles from 0 to -20, like I said. I would go -1.
Alright, okay.
-1. There is not a whole lot wrong with that film.
I was actually expecting 0.5.
Really?
Not a 1.
I'm trying to be a little stingier with my ratings now.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, a lot of films out there, a lot to be rated.
Yeah.
I'd say -1. That is only 1 point off perfection.
Yeah,
so.
true. Well, I would go...
Keep in mind, you have to go lower than 0.5 as you rated your favorite.
No,
0.5.
I've just been trying to think. I'll probably go minus... It's a real tough one. It's between -2 and -1.5.
Oh.
Just because, I still really like the film. It's just the replay value for me isn't as big.
It is a bit of a time capsule.
Yeah. I'll probably go -1.5 just because I think I watched it early enough in my life that it's got the nostalgia thing.
Exactly. It has that place in your heart. You're always going to love it. You're never
I think
turn
if I
against it.
came to it now, I would still find it funny, but maybe I wouldn't be gung-ho about it.
Yeah.
So I'll go with -1.5 for this one, just because
Fair enough.
still a very good Mel Brooks film, one of the best.
And perhaps we'll get back to him someday.
I'm sure we will.
Whether or not directly or not, I'm sure he will come up.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
think that's all for us today.
Probably. I'm sure the people listening are.
Thank you for everyone who stuck with us.
Yes.
For hearing about films that are how many years old? 1974. You do the math.
74. That would be
38 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to read this spiel off fairly quick as I remember I forgot to do it. Yes. If you want to follow us on Facebook, you can do that at facebook.com/blokebusters. On Twitter, it's even easier. It's just @blokebusters. We do have a blogspot website if you're so inclined. blokebusterspodcast.blogspot.com. We have an email if you want to email us any comments, feedback, or just spam.
Any expletives.
Anything, really. Even if you're just going to send us some emails saying, you got this one fact wrong. I hate you, you bastards.
Criticism is okay. Please prefer not to threaten our lives. That's just annoying.
That's the line, if you wouldn't mind. And it's Blokebuster Podcast, so no S at the end of Blokebusters for that one, @gmail.com. And I also just wanted to say, I haven't said this on here yet, but I really should have. Thank you to RetroDude666 on YouTube for letting us use his version of the 8-bit Ghostbusters as our theme tune. Because I got out to him and he got back to me straight away saying, yeah, sure, you can use it. So
I don't know. Yeah, I'll go ahead and cover this. If there are any artistically inclined people out there who would like to draw us a logo, we, as of yet, do not have artwork. So you can submit them to any of the ways that Paul mentioned. To the Twitter or an email or whatever you got.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that anything that plays on the Ghostbusters thing,
something movie related. Doesn't
necessarily
necessarily have to be Ghostbusters. It can be your own take, but that's obviously one way to go.
Yeah, I mean, just saying that based on the theme tune.
Yes, yes, exactly. Something film incorporated.
And if you wanted to, you could also go with the Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Take some sort of twist on that.
Some interesting font, maybe tossing this out there, the Star Wars font, or maybe identifiable. Or,
unfortunately, neither of us are so inclined. So,
or we would be doing that ourselves.
We've gone so far. We've sort of hit.
I got the ideas, but not the means.
Yeah.
So if you're so inclined, we'd appreciate it. I think that's all we have for today.
All right. Well, I have been Paul.
And I am been Brian.
You have been Brian.
I am and still will be tomorrow.
All right. Well, I hope I'm still Paul tomorrow.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening.